Good morning. We will pay attention to interest today that's charged on the account of a debtor or when a creditor charges the account of the business with interest. If debtors settle their accounts promptly, they are often allowed discount. If they don't settle their accounts in a considerable time, interest is usually charged on this overdue amount. Interest charged on account is recorded by means of a general journal entry. As the debtor's debt must increase with the interest because they didn't pay their account in time, it means that their account must be debited because debtors is an asset and assets increase on the debit side. Interest income is now income for the business that will increase the profits, and therefore income must be credited. When a creditor was not paid in time, the agreement with the creditor will charge interest on the overdue account. Interest added to the business's account is an expense for the business because now the business must pay that interest, and it will increase the amount that we owe to the creditor. So the interest charge on the account will be debited in the interest expense account to increase expenses, and the creditor's account will be credited to increase the liability. This entry will be done in the general journal. Interest income and interest expense are two separate accounts. You don't put income and expenses in the same account. Income and expenses are kept separately. S. Baker owed 200 Rand at the beginning of the month. S. Baker was charged with interest at 5% per annum on his account because he already owes the money for 6 months. So we know that we must increase the account of S. Baker in the debtor's ledger with 5 Rand because his individual account must increase, and we will also record the 5 Rand in the debtor's control account. Interest is an income, and income will increase on the credit side. If we have to calculate the interest, we will take the amount, 200 Rand, multiply it with the 5%, and work it out for the number of months that the interest is charged. In this case, they said it was 6 months, so we will work out the interest for 6 months. Mzini received a notice from Gallagher Shoes that their account was debited with 7 Rand. Now remember, that is in Gallagher Shoes business that they will debit it, because from their point of view, we are a debtor to them. In our books, Gallagher Shoes is a creditor because we owe the money to them. Creditors increase on the credit side, so Gallagher Shoes will be credited in the creditor's ledger to increase the amount that we owe them, and the creditor's control account will also be credited. Now we have to pay interest, so interest expense will be debited with 7 Rand. In the general ledger, the interest expense account will be debited because expenses increase on the debit side, and we will show that Gallagher Shoes was credited. The interest income account will be credited because income always increases on the credit side. If we look at the ledger accounts, we see that S. Baker, the outstanding amount was 200. We added another 5 Rand on the debit side because they didn't pay in time. So now the outstanding debt increased to 205 Rand. In the creditor's ledger, the outstanding amount was 120 Rand. We credit the account with 7 Rand because we didn't pay in time, so we owe them 127 now. When the account of a debtor is not paid in time, the account of the debtor is debited to increase the amount that he owes you, and interest received, that is an income, will be credited. When the account of a creditor is not paid in the required time, the creditor will be credited to increase the outstanding amount of the liability, and the expense account interest expense will be debited.